Abersarden, better known as D Rose, was a key figure in Chicago's gang scene, particularly within the Black Peace Stones of Motown. His ties to the streets were undeniable, with his father being a prominent member of the Motown faction, which naturally led D Rose to follow in his footsteps. However, tragedy struck when his father passed away around 2009 to 2010, a loss that deeply affected D Rose. In the wake of his father's death, D Rose made the decision to join 600, a faction that would later become integral to his notoriety in the streets. Yet, his loyalty to the Black Stones never wavered until the death of fellow gang member Lil Steve, after which D Rose switched allegiance to the Black Disciples. Initially, D Rose was known for being highly respected across various Black Disciple sets. His name carried weight, particularly after Chief Keef started mentioning him in his music. The rapper's shoutouts only amplified the already growing rumors surrounding D Rose's involvement in numerous shootings and murders. Though some of these rumors were indeed grounded in reality, they stem from the harsh truth of D Rose's involvement in the streets after the death of Baldy from 600. His name was reportedly coined by other figures in the gang, though it's unclear who exactly gave it to him. Regardless of the origin of the name, D Rose quickly became known as one of the most feared figures in Chicago gangland. D Rose's reputation grew as he became affiliated with multiple sets beyond just 600. While he officially claimed 600, he also had ties to various other factions such as THF 46, TYMB, Lamron, and Front Street. His loyalty was rare in a world where gang members frequently flip allegiances, but D Rose never wavered. He remained neutral during the conflict between THF 46 and TYMB, refusing to pick sides. His reputation as a loyal and active street figure continued to rise as he was involved in countless hits alongside fellow 600 member CD. D Rose's name was now etched into the fabric of Chicago's gang culture. As D Rose's power and influence spread across the streets of Chicago, his name became synonymous with violence, fear, and retribution. He was no longer just another name in the game. He was a force to be reckoned with, a walking nightmare that the city's residents dreaded. The streets, already soaked with the blood of countless victims, grew even darker with every move D Rose made. His rise wasn't just about respect. It was about the terror he instilled in everyone who came across his path. By this point, D Rose had already made a name for himself in the grim underworld of Chicago's gang wars. But his thirst for power and retribution had just begun. His reputation was sealed as one of the most ruthless figures in the city, a man who had no problem putting his enemies 6 feet under to prove a point. One of the most chilling incidents in D Rose's violent ascent came with the brutal murder of Lil Durk, a key member of No Love City. The streets were already buzzing with tensions, but the death of Lil Durk sent shockwaves through the underworld. Word on the street was that D Rose was behind the hit, a story that seemed too real to ignore. It wasn't just about the killing, it was about the calculated nature of it. D Rose wasn't some reckless gangbanger pulling the trigger on a whim. He was a strategist, a man who knew how to send a clear, terrifying message. On that fateful day, D Rose and his crew rolled out, moving with the precision of a well-trained unit. They spotted Lil Durk, and with little hesitation, D Rose upended his weapon and sent the fatal shots ringing through the air. The sound of gunfire echoed down the block as Lil Durk fell, his life snuffed out in an instant. The murder was swift, clinical, and cold-blooded, a signature move that left no room for doubt about D Rose's growing power. However, it was the death of Lil Jojo that would solidify D Rose's place as a true terror in the streets. The BDs were already gunning for Jojo, but when D Rose's name was linked to his murder, the city erupted. Rumors spread like wildfire that D Rose had pulled the trigger, and while no one could definitively prove it, the whispers were enough to send chills down the spine of anyone who heard them. The rivalry between the BDs and 600 was already brutal, but with Jojo's death, it reached an entirely new level of animosity. The air was thick with suspicion and hatred, with every gang member wondering who was next. But the story didn't end there. D-Rose, feeling the weight of the city closing in on him, wasn't done. The streets were his battleground, and no one was safe from his wrath. He didn't just wait for his enemies to come to him. He went on the offensive. The streets of Chicago had become a war zone, and D-Rose was the commander leading his troops into battle. As the bloodshed continued, D-Rose became even more notorious. His name was now whispered with fear across every set in the city, and he seemed untouchable. But it wasn't just about the killings, it was the way he operated. D-Rose wasn't just a gang member. He was a soldier of violence, constantly moving, never staying in one place long enough for the law to catch up. He slid through the streets with deadly intent, his presence alone enough to make his enemies tremble. One of the most infamous of his many violent actions was the war between Motown and 50 Strong, a conflict that D-Rose became deeply involved in around 2011. This was no ordinary beef. This was a battle for dominance. D-Rose, with his loyalty to multiple sets, was a key figure in the conflict. The war escalated when he became involved in a targeted hit against a member of the 50 Strong faction, and he didn't hesitate to pull the trigger. It wasn't just a hit, it was a statement. D-Rose wasn't just another foot soldier. He was the one pulling the strings, making sure his enemies knew that crossing him would come with a deadly price. As his body count grew, so did the tension between rival factions. Every move D-Rose made sent shockwaves throughout the city. He was a constant presence in the streets, a man who could not be ignored. Every set knew that if D-Rose was on your tail, you wouldn't have much time left. The violence escalated further as D-Rose continued his reign of terror. He wasn't just out to protect his turf, he was out to dominate the entire city. In 2012, when he was spotted with several key members from rival sets, including THF-46 and TYMB, it was clear that D-Rose was a man who could not be contained by one block, one crew, or one gang. He had allies in every corner of the city, and he wasn't afraid to use them when the time came. With D-Rose's increasing involvement in the violence, the police were hot on his trail, but no matter how many times they arrested him, he always found a way to slip through their fingers. His name became synonymous with the chaos that was ravaging the city. The police were desperately trying to track him down, but D-Rose's ability to avoid capture seemed almost legendary. It wasn't just about evading the law, it was about making his presence known at all times. By 2014, D-Rose's legacy as one of the most feared figures in Chicago's gang world was firmly cemented. Whether it was through his involvement in major hits, his loyalty to multiple sets, or his sheer dominance on the streets, D-Rose became a living legend of the violence that plagued the city. His name became a signal for everyone involved in the game. Cross him, and you risked your life. In the end, D-Rose's story is one of constant violence, bloodshed, and a reputation that stretched across every corner of Chicago's gangland. Though he would eventually fall victim to the law and find himself behind bars, his name will forever live on as one of the most feared and respected figures in Chicago's violent history. His rise to power, his brutal acts of vengeance, and his relentless pursuit of dominance over the streets left a legacy that will never be forgotten. That concludes today's video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you're alerted whenever a new video drops. It's completely free and helps out the channel tremendously. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.